Now, as Chinese and American officials are about to meet in Anchorage, Alaska, the U.S. side sent a message to Beijing. We will push back if necessary when China uses coercion or aggression to get its way. That is according to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He said that during a press conference in Tokyo, Japan on Tuesday. The comments came while he and the U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin met with their Japanese counterparts to discuss bilateral relations and security, among other issues. It was the first international trip for senior Biden officials. How to interpret these meetings? What does it all mean for China? Joining me today in Beijing is Qingqing, senior reporter at the Global Times. From Japan is Takesato Watanabe, professor emeritus at Doshisha University. Let me go to you first, Qingqing. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and senior Chinese official Yang Jiechi and Foreign Minister Wang Yi are all in Alaska right now as we speak. They will start their, three-hour sessions in a span of 2 days. Your expectations on, what can be achieved during these meetings?
Yes, thank you for having me. We all know that this meeting, we have a lot of different expectations for this meeting, and because right now it's quite critical for both China and the United States. I think a lot of journalists like you and me, we can't sleep very well tonight, and we have to wait till tomorrow morning to get some details from the meeting. But I read an article from the Chinese ambassador to the United States, Cui Tiankai, and he said that there are some bottom lines that China has to present to the United States on the some issues like of core interest, including Hong Kong, Taiwan, and also Xinjiang. But also we don't have like some unrealistic view about the meeting because this is the first high-level meeting between Chinese officials and United States officials. So I think first we should be realistic about this meeting, and the second we should focus on some major issues of concerns for both sides, and we can meet each other. That's the good point, right?
Yeah, for sure. We keep an eye on what's coming out of these meetings for sure. We also have with us today from D.C., Washington, D.C., Eland. He's a senior fellow at Independent Institute. Ivan, we've heard from the Chinese ambassador, Cui Tiankai, saying that China will not yield an inch when it comes to issues concerning its national security and sovereignty. He also said the U.S. side is also, he didn't say that, but many media reports said that the U.S. side is eager to look tough and it's demanding China to abide by norms and rules. If you hear what Antony Blinken has said during a House hearing, what's your expectation of these meetings?
Well, I think that's correct. I think these are, sort of, the first meetings, and it's sort of an introductory posturing is what you'll get from both sides. Everybody wants to lay out their initial position, and after that, then the real negotiations, I think, can start. And certainly, Joe Biden is under pressure here on trade and China policy to be tough, maybe not as tough as Trump, but there are domestic pressures here on him to stand up to China. So I don't think you're going to see a drastic change in U.S. policy, but I think, and also he's very pro-alliances, U.S. alliances, which is why, the meetings with Japan and that sort of thing. And so, he's more of a traditionalist in foreign policy. He's going to be less unpredictable than Trump was, of course. And so that's probably good for the stability of the relations. But I think he's not going to be a weak type of actor. as Trump was in certain respects because of his erratic nature and stuff that way. But certainly, I think there's more hope in U.S.-Chinese relations now that Biden is president than had been under Trump.
Yeah, Ivan, how much do you think these meetings and Antony Blinken's statements have to do with getting the optics right for a domestic American audience? And what are the domestic political constraints facing the Biden administration when it comes to dealing with China?
Yeah, I think that's exactly correct. The first meetings are definitely to set the tone, and not only with China, but here at home as regards China. And that is that both parties have become more protectionist. The Republican Party used to be more free trade than it is now, and I'd say the Republican Party is probably the more protectionist party, but both parties are still very protectionist, and I think that has to do with the Great Recession of 2007, 2008 era, and of course the recession now because of the pandemic. And whenever you have a recession, you get more protectionist, and that is just, historical. The historical record shows that in the Great Depression, unfortunately, they made it worse by being more protectionist. So I think both parties here in the United States, including the Democratic Party, have become more protectionist because of these economic downturns, and therefore it puts constraints on politicians of both parties. And you could see how Trump made hay with that, as we say in the United States. In other words, took advantage of that protectionist sentiment to take him all the way to the White House. So, but there's still protectionist sentiment, and I think that's a constraint on U.S. politicians as far as the Chinese economic issues go.
Yeah, let me go to Professor Watanabe in Japan. Sir, welcome to The Point. Your assessment on U.S.-Japan talks earlier this week, and how do you think these talks, the U.S.-Japan alliance under Biden, will impact U.S.-China relations going forward?
Now the Japanese economy is getting down and down because of coronavirus problems and some other false statement by Prime Minister Suga. So many people in Japan, they want to improve the relations with China for the further economic progress in Asia. And secondly, when we go to the talks delivered by Antony Blinken recently, he said, you see, China is very terrible. And he said, he referred to the many places that belong to China, like Hong Kong. So Japanese people are concerned with those people, but only intellectuals. And other people, business people especially, they don't think of those things so deeply. And also, militarily speaking, United States want to make Japan a nuclear weapons base to attack or to be offensive to China. They put those military bases in Okinawa. However, more than half of the Okinawa people, they are against those United States policies. In addition, Prime Minister Suga's supporting rate recently in Japan, it is getting down and down. Now it is less than 40%. So business people and ordinary people in Japan, they want to get stronger relations, peaceful relations with China.
Right.
So,
yeah, certainly it's a difficult situation for Japan, for Prime Minister Suga right now, if he were to pick and choose, from either China or the United States. Let's look at some Chinese reaction here. China's spokesperson in the Foreign Ministry, Zhao Lijian, said a number of things, including whereby he said that U.S.-Japan joint statement maliciously attacks China's foreign policy, flagrantly interferes in China's domestic affairs, and attempts to harm China's interests, and that China deplores and rejects the statement referring to the U.S.-Japan statement after their defense ministers and Secretary of State's meetings. Qingqing, let me go back to you. What tone does this set for U.S.-China talks?
I think it's quite interesting to compare the statement between the United States and Japan with the United States and South Korea, because today we can see in the statement between the United States and South Korea, there's not a lot of mentioning of China, but as you mentioned that in the statement of U.S.-Japan, there are a lot of negative tone about China in terms of the regional security, in terms of forming this anti-China bloc in the they call it Indo-Pacific, but it's the Asian Pacific we call. So I think it's quite different, and there are some.
Yeah, Biden is not changing much from the Trump era policies, even adopting some of the terminologies.
Yes, but because the Indo-Pacific, the term is created by the former Prime Minister, like the Shinzo Abe. He was the person who brought up this term at the global stage at first, and then it was used by the Trump administration, like to formulate an anti-China bloc in Asia Pacific. So it's quite. But we know that on the issue of Diaoyu Island, for example, that China has always has the same position on the issue. So the Japanese government cannot do a lot to change that. So it's more like a rhetoric, like more anti-China rhetoric. But I don't think it will create a lot of impact on the upcoming talks between China and the United States, because the Japanese position has been consistent on the countering China on the regional issue, on the security issue, but it plays a little influence on the China-U.S. talks from the past experience.
Exactly. All eyes are on Anchorage, Alaska, as senior Chinese and American officials are about to start their two-day meetings. Thank you very much, Chen Qingqing from the Global Times, Ivan Eland from the Independent Institute, and Professor Takesato Watanabe from Doshisha University.